Hooker Ramirez was a motherfucking classic.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
But it had to be behind a paywall to zone, and nobody fucking saw the fight, bro. This shit was a fucking classic. But Bob Arum, and I'm gonna hate, and everybody's gonna hate me right now for what I'm gonna say. The Honorable Bob Arum.
Oh shit!
Listen, the Honorable Bob Arum did right by his fighter.
Yes, he did, and I say it all the time.
Now, I personally would, I would say that calling Bob Arum honourable was stretching it a bit, but I think it serves a much more profound and wider purpose. That's why that gentleman has done that. I think it taps into something much more significant that we are all aware of on YouTube here, in as much of a group of people who might look like him and are grouped together in a particular community and hold a particular point of view and support a particular type of fighter. He talked about that, and he gave some insight, and I did find some of his observations to be on point. Unfortunately, when it comes to Bob Arum, I think he's done that deliberately. He's giving that maniacal laugh and spoken with such enthusiasm and veneration about Bob Arum as a method of triggering a visceral reaction from certain people, or alternatively appeasing a group of people who might hold a contrary point of view to the people he's trying to trigger. Either one works for a person like this, and I find it a little bit disingenuous. I agree with a lot of the stuff that a lot of the views that he might hold in general about Al Heyman. But if you're going to tell the story, I suppose you have to tell the whole story of Bob Arum and PBC and Al Heyman, and how come things came to be the way they are right now. I think it's quite easy to try and suggest somehow that the irrational and illogical people, in as much as this matter is concerned, Bob Arum, Al Heyman, PBC, and the fanatical support that PBC gets, okay, is somewhat as a consequence of black people being immoral, always finding racism where it doesn't exist, being sensitive and always looking for a handout and always looking for this and always looking for that. There was a lot of things that were spoken about there, particularly as it relates to PBC and this notion that PBC fighters are part of this affirmative action scheme. It doesn't necessarily mean that black fighters alone benefit from that. It could be a Danny Garcia as well, a Puerto Rican or somebody like that. But if you're associated with that brand, there's a good chance that you're going to benefit from this largesse, as opposed to going for glory and all this other stuff, which if you were to listen to him at length, he claims Bob Arum sort of nurture their fighters towards. They give them these type of fights, build them up, and then they throw them up in the deep end. But I thought that was normal practice for just about every promoter. There are criticisms, legitimate criticisms, constructive criticisms that you can level at PBC, and they are legion. They are legion. For one thing, the fact that they do not sign any females in this environment is mind-boggling to me and unacceptable. Okay, but it seems to me that they can get away with it. It is what it is. Okay, however, we need to sort of look under the hood when we are criticizing the way Al Heyman handles his fighters and why they are so grateful to him and why they remain loyal to him. It's not simply because they get easy fights. It's because of what Bob Arum did to fighters of color. The same Bob Arum that he's calling most honorable. We have a pattern here, okay? And he mentioned, you see, the reason why I'm making this video is because he also talked about Guillermo Rigonda. He said, what did Bob Arum do about Guillermo Rigonda? And it is true that Al Heyman is really the principal culprit when it comes to freezing out Guillermo Rigonda. I have no qualms with that. However, who got that ball rolling? Who made it convenient for Al Heyman to do that? It was Bob Arum And Bob Arum did what he does best, which is to brief against black fighters, play to people's prejudices, and then hands off. He's done it on 3 occasions that I can determine right now. He's done it against Floyd Mayweather. He was the one who labeled Floyd Mayweather a coward. That's stuck with Floyd Mayweather since God knows for forever. Then he labeled Guillermo Rigondeaux a fighter that if he mentioned to HBO executives, they wanted to puke. Now, let's take that for what it is, not at face value, but for what it is, what he was trying to convey there, the message he was trying to convey there against a particular black fighter who looks a particular kind of way, when all these people at HBO were trying to say that black fighters like Floyd Mayweather, like Guillermo Rigondeaux, were boring. That was the brief they constantly kept on putting out there against these fighters. They're boring, they're boring, they're boring, they're boring, they're boring. It's very important because it actually feeds into the reason why all those other fighters that were supposedly boring found a home with Al Heyman, and he took care of them and actually sold them. And it is still successful to today. And you need to ask yourself why. And those same fighters that they were labeling as boring are the ones that the same guys that were calling them boring say they need to fight this one, they need to fight that one, they need to fight this one, they need to fight that one. And it really goes back to the idea of Floyd Mayweather being a coward or being boring. Why do you want to watch him then? Because they're not bothering you, they're staying with their own little group. So if they're staying with their own, they're not bothering you, they're staying with their own little group, yet you still have a problem. And yet you got a whole bunch of people saying that they're boring, they don't sell. It's not brought up by some weird coincidence that Abel Sanchez had the gall to come out and say that black fighters don't sell. And he trains fighters in the Mexican style, big drama show and all this shit that he was doing with Triple G. Alright? But this guy reduces what Al Heyman, sorry, not Al Heyman, but Arum did to Guillermo Rigondeaux as being nothing. Yes, Al Heyman did terrible things in as much as Guillermo Rigondeaux was concerned, in keeping Guillermo Rigondeaux away from Leo Santa Cruz and alongside Barry McGuigan, Carl Frampton, and they fought each other and they made money and they decided to brief against Guillermo Rigondeaux as well, as long as with everybody else. But I don't think Guillermo Rigondeaux helped himself as well. Guillermo Rigondeaux of late, a lot of these Cubans have gotten on my nerves, so I'm not necessarily here to say that nobody's there, just one party's at fault. But there's no way in hell you're going to let Bob Arum off the hook and call him honorable. Bob Arum is honorable. I see a pattern here with what I just saw today. Forgive me. What I just saw today with Terence Crawford. Now, this is a story that's been written. This is a story that's been written here. Arum stands by Crawford comments, disinterested in promoting his fights. That's what Arum put up. The tweet itself. This is the tweet. Arum stands by Crawford comments, disinterested in promoting his fights. And if I go back to the article itself, let's read it. Okay? This was supposed to lead in to what I was going to talk about when it comes to Bob Arum anyway. It says top-ranked chairman Bob Arum has taken heat for his comments he recently made about losing money on welterweight world titleist Terence Crawford fights and how Crawford, in his view, needs to do a better job bringing attention to himself. But Arum said he doesn't care about the criticism and stands by his comments. I don't give a shit, Arum told Boxing Scene. I don't care because what the Crawford camp did was reprehensible. The lawyer sent a letter to us. Okay, that's what lawyers do. But you don't release it to the press. All of this should have been behind closed doors, like what men do. So why is it that Arum feels that it's okay to you to tell the press that behind closed doors, HBO executives want to puke when they hear the name Guillermo Rigondeaux? Okay? You destroyed the man's career. It is what it is. It was that he elicited that much disgust in the people at HBO. And let's not forget that there's a racial element to that too. Whether you choose to see it or not, listen, these issues matter. If you don't do it to somebody Mexican, I've never seen Bob Arum talk like this about a Mikey Garcia who stayed on the bench for 2 years and wouldn't fight for him. Or Oscar de la Hoya. He did call Oscar de la Hoya a moron later, when Oscar de la Hoya had long left him. Okay, and let's not forget that part of the reason why Floyd left Arum was because he wasn't giving him the same kind of promotion that he was giving to Crawford. The same thing that we noticed with the kind of promotion he's giving to Tyson Fury. Holding Tyson Fury's hand, laughing, losing money on the guy, has nothing to say. Okay, but you got a problem because they put something in public when you called somebody a coward. You more or less set the ball rolling in as much as Floyd Mayweather being a coward and being this and being that. And Floyd Mayweather don't want to work with him, doesn't want to make money with him. You did the same thing to Guillermo Rigondeaux, and now you're doing the same damn thing to Crawford. And we're supposed to believe that that's honorable behavior? So yeah, let's go back to the whole notion of these fighters being boring. That's why they left those spheres of influence in boxing that belong to Golden Boy and Bob Arum and so on and so forth. And we have to ask, why are they still successful to today? You might not necessarily like their practices, you might not necessarily like their point of view, you might not necessarily like how defensive they get, and I don't like it either. But it doesn't mean there isn't a story behind it. It is a consequence of something much larger and bigger that they were putting up with. And for somebody to dismiss that and act like these people are just being irrational, I guess I can understand when somebody labels somebody like that a fucking coon. Not that I agree with that term, but I can understand why somebody would make that person out to be a fucking coon.
Bob Arum, and I'm gonna hate, and everybody's gonna hate me right now for what I'm gonna say. The Honorable Bob Arum.